Hey guys, Dark Humility here. You can always catch me at twitch.tv/Dark Humility for 6 to 7 days a week of Diablo 2 action. We play PD2, we play D2R, we usually follow the ladder resets, and we mostly play hardcore, so check us out. We do it all. Every manner of build, every crazy thing. And we also have tons of build guides on max roll for D2R and for PD2 and D2R on my YouTube, which you can check out, including this season's tier list or season 5, the ultimate tier list, and the ultimate farming guide on D2R also on my YouTube as well. But yeah, definitely make sure to check out that softcore and hardcore friendly PD2 season 5 tier list with starter builds, uber builds, and of course the late game mapping tier list, so make sure to check that out. Anyways, today we have a really awesome build for you guys, just an awesome guide in general. Today we have something special, going with the theme of two-handed hardcore, just like we hit level 99 with our hardcore staff lightning sorceress using a chromatic ire. We have here a brimstone rain staff hardcore druid. Now, playing with two hands is the only way to do it, in my opinion, in season 5, because staves are crazy. The chance to cast and just the crazy stats in general, it's just a really fun time. And if you stack all your points into vitality, you'll probably be okay, as long as you are able to dodge some witch balls and some other things here and there. But at any rate, what we're going to do here is we're going to go over the stats, the skills, the gear, and then we're going to do some quick demos so you guys can see this character in action. It's a 163% FCR Bowling Druid. It's a fire druid, hardcore fire druid. And it is a bowling druid. A lot of people believe that Volcano is the pinnacle of the fire druid, and while that is the case in a lot of areas like the Blood Moon, which we will show off, that is not the case for every single area, and there's plenty of bowling alleys to be had. But anyway, let's get into it. Let's show off what this build is capable of. Of course, we will make sure get it all readied up. And alright, so as you can see here, let's go over the stats real quick first. So we almost have max all res. We could definitely play around with some charms, maybe some small charms could definitely improve it a little bit. And then you can easily get like 100% max res in general, especially on a non-shield build where you're not relying on any kind of block. Especially if you only have one life, I recommend making sure your res is max no matter what, or pretty close to it. And of course, you want as many plus skills and negative enemy fire res on a fire druid. However, because we're going to be focusing on the abilities that also have physical damage, like Molten Boulder, Armageddon, and Volcano, negative enemy physical resistance also helps quite a bit. And yes, Molten Boulder, you can fire it faster with faster FCR. It also helps out your teleport speed with Enigma and your gust speed, and also your ability to resummon your animals. So 163 FCR is really, really good. As you can see, we have just barely hit here with our gear. I also recommend definitely getting a pretty higher FHR breakpoint if you're not using a shield. Usually on most hardcore builds, I make sure to use a shield in the past, and then you don't really have to worry about FHR all that much because you're mostly using your block frames instead. But on this build, you're definitely going to want to focus on that for sure. MF is not an insane priority, especially considering that you can reroll maps and corrupt maps to really high MF to the point where you're around 200, which is nice anyway. However, just having the 66 from Enigma isn't bad, and of course it scales with your level, which is nice as well. I only have 16% base damage reduction. The Mercenary, though, is giving us another 9%. So 25% is okay. You know, that's due to this being a little bit low. It's kind of hard to find a faster cast rate dungos in hardcore, but if I can get my hands on a 15 DR, 10 FCR one, we can get closer to 30%, which is okay. Definitely playing it a little risky though. You could just play with Gust and not have quite as much mobility, but that's also a little risky for other reasons. And you can go with maybe I don't know, something like Arcane's Valor or even Shaft Stop or a safety armor or something of that nature. And then, however, then you'd have to put a lot more points into strength. So there's definitely a lot of drawbacks to going even more DR. But, you know, having a decent amount, making sure you have damage reduction is important. It's kind of like I had some damage reduction on my staff lightning sorceress as well. And we definitely have good res, as you can see here. Fire res is especially stacked just because of this staff alone. So it's pretty cool. The staff just has a lot of fire res. Matter of fact, it could have even more. I think it rolled minimum fire res, so definitely a lot of potential there. And notice we have a lot of elemental pierce, not counting the conviction from infinity. I have tested the amplified damage versions of this build, and overall, the Infinity version does seem a lot smoother if you're going to go this approach. However, the amp approach is good if you want to focus even more physical damage, and if you have maybe even more negative enemy fire res on your gear, you could maybe justify going amp on the Mercenary. The problem, though, is Reaper's Toll doesn't proc often enough, and Wrath means that you don't get the Defiance Aura on the Mercenary, and then you don't have enough DR. So there's a lot of considerations here, but overall, I think this is a pretty solid approach. Let's go over the skills real quick here. Skills are pretty simple. I make sure to put one into each of the summons. I most only focus on summoning the wolves and the grizzly though, because the ravens you'll have to constantly resummon, and they don't really do much except for freeze targets every once in a while anyway. And so then you also have me maxing out Oak Sage after I make sure to max out Molten Boulder, Fissure, Volcano, and Armageddon. Since we're not doing Fissure though, we're not leveling up Firestorm. The rest of these skills synergize. So the rest of these, Volcano, Molten Boulder, and Armageddon, just make sure you have Fissure, which is the synergy, and then these three skills maxed out. You're going to want one into Gust and one into Cyclone Armor. Cyclone Armor is really good this season, and with Ravenlord providing energy even helps Cyclone Armor scale. So that's going to make you a lot tankier, and you're actually very tanky against elemental damage on this build, especially with so much life and absorb. Once again, like these really high life focused builds with no block are very strong against elemental damage. However, of course, they can get skewered by physical damage in the wrong situations. The Lightning Sorceress relied on a chance to cast slow missiles, and she relied on a lot of maximum life and 1 point energy shield to keep her safe. This build has similar life and is mostly relying on Oak Sage and his summons to tank damage for him, which is how he's able to remain safe in maps. Despite not having a shield in hardcore. Of course, on softcore, you could do a very similar build, and you can go probably even harder on the negative enemy res, and in some cases, even harder on the plus skills. But in many ways, this build could almost be just as easily transferred to softcore. Alright, and so that's about it. Those are all your skills. There's a lot of hotkeys you're going to have to pump on this build. I am using a ton of hotkeys. I'm using 2 teleport hotkeys, Armageddon, Molten Boulder, Volcano, which is good for ranging enemies that could be even more or too dangerous for you to get close to. And then, of course, hotkeys for each of the summons. So there's just a lot of hotkeys in general. And honestly, with Defiance Aura, he also gets kind of decent defense, but that's not too important. Alright, so let's go over his gear real quick. So once again, on Hardcore, I do recommend the Defiance Mercenary approach. You can even argue on Softcore this is still the same approach. And then you can go, like I said, you can use like Wrathbow or Reapers just doesn't proc the amp enough. I'd say Wrathbow Act 1 Mercenary would be good. Infinity Act 2 Mercenary. You could go Act 5 Whirlwind Mercenary as well for the Battle Cry, which will also help out with the physical damage portion of these fire skills. Do keep in mind though, as of Season 5 though, that fire damage is still higher than the physical portion of the damage, so that's another reason why all this negative enemy fire res is important, and having that on there in addition to Infinity does tend to increase your damage the most. But in general, this is an Stygian Pike. People ask why the base. Well, bases, you can almost do whatever you want in PD2. Just depends on how much attack speed you have on the rest of your build. Stygian Pike is a bit of a slower base, but has higher damage, and higher damage bases are fine on PD2, because you can get a lot of attack speed elsewhere. I'm actually not even fully taking advantage of the attack speed, because I'm mostly focusing on making sure my Mercenary has a lot of damage reduction. And he also has, you know, some Deadly Strike, Crushing Blow, and has a lot of Life Leech, and damage. In general, though, damage, Life Leech, damage reduction, resistances, attack speed, and all of those things that are going to be very important for the Mercenary. Even Cannot Be Frozen would be a good stat. I don't have it currently, but it doesn't really matter too much. He gets plenty of defense just through this. Alright, and so let's go into the main gear now. So the main gear, Brimstone Rain, I really like this item because if you can get a good corruption, so I got a 4-socket puzzle box with a life per kill corruption, which is nice for sustain. You could get an even better corruption, maybe you can get an all-skill corruption, or you can get additional FCR. There's a lot of things you can get, like FCR fire damage corruption, that'd be another nice one. But in general, I like it a lot because it gives reduction to enemy physical res, and there is a large physical res component to these skills, and that will additionally help you kill fire immunes or highly fire resistant monsters, especially in maps, very quickly, having a staff like this, and will also help you get to the 163 FCR breakpoint. You could also go Ming Song's Lesson, which can proc lower resist, which is pretty awesome stuff. Has even more plus skills and can give you even more negative enemy fire res. I put in 2 all resistance jewels and 2 -5 fire facets in this staff, so it is not 100% perfect. It could have even more damage, absolutely. Res can be a bit challenging though. So yeah, on my Sorceress build, I had a lot of all resistance on the Chromatic Ire itself, so I actually had to use some jewels in this case in the Brimstone Rain. You can see it's pretty solid stuff. We rolled perfect on the Enigma. Enigma is just so much better for mobility, and one thing to note about Enigma Teleport versus Gust on this build is that you don't get the global cooldowns. There's actually certain abilities you can't use immediately after using Gust, including Volcano and some other pretty important abilities. So using the Enigma Teleport can allow you to move more freely and use your abilities more freely with the global cooldowns that still exist on Project Diablo 2. Which is pretty cool stuff. But yeah, anyway, it's also giving us a lot of really good stats like DR, maximum life. It's allowing us to get enough strength to wear other key items as well. And it's giving us our only source of fast run walk on this build at 2 skills. And just the freedom and ability to move and magic find. So it's a very solid, very solid thing to have Enigma here. But you can also use a lot of +2 armors that give FCR and other stats as well. And you can even put more fire facets in them if you so choose. You can even go the Ormus route if you wanted to. There's definitely a lot of things you could do. In Ravenlore is, yeah, this is a very GG Ravenlore. -35% enemy fire resistance. Very cool stuff. That's very cool indeed. And as you can see here, we put in a lot of -5 fire facets into it. Got a lot of % fire skill damage, energy, which helps the Cyclone armor, all resistance, and 3 elemental skills. I don't think on a fire druid there's a better helmet than this. I think this is just pretty much the best it gets using a Ravenlore. And then a 218 amulet, very important to hit that 163 FCR breakpoint for the speed of firing boulders. think 99 might be able to cut it, but honestly 99 will slow down your DPS on a bowling druid, which is what this is, a lot. So that's one of the reasons why we're going a staff druid even on hardcore, is because I'm really looking for that really high FCR, which can be tough to attain sometimes using other abilities, but also just because there's just a lot of good stuff on her. So yeah, that's good. Pretty basic amulet though, it's nothing too special. Then you know you got your CTA, your lidless. I cannot be frozen on my boots, and once again this build has resistance problems, so try res boots. Hit recovery is also very important. Need that FCR and a fire skill, so there you go. Mage Fist is pretty much best in slot no matter what. And 40 life definitely doesn't hurt to buff up your life a bit. And then we have some 20 FCR rings, one with mana, one with res, life, and mana. Definitely this build can have some mana problems if you don't go MPK or mana regen or just a lot of mana in general. It still has a little bit of mana issues even with this version of the build, so there's definitely some improvements to be had. You have a 10 FCR Verdungos, of course, as well to help us hit that breakpoint, while also giving us damage reduction. We really need that damage reduction. Getting hit sometimes, you don't usually get hit because you have summons around you, but if you do, it can be very painful. And if you want to prevent yourself from dying, this is a good option. It's definitely, you could use like a rack and whatnot, especially if you go something like shaft stop on the armor or something. There's definitely other things you could do. But 20 FCR rings are pretty good. I actually self-corrupted that one, so that one's kind of neat. You know, self-boxed, self-corrupted, you know, we got some good stuff on here. This one I traded for. That was a nice one, though, but I put the facets in. So all good stuff in general. And then just lifers, FHR to hit that 42 breakpoint, which is what we're going for on this build. And just life, res, small charms, just in general. And, of course, a good Druid Torch and a random Annihilus charm that's kind of decent. And that's pretty much it. Of course, you know, there's lots of improvements. You know, you can get +2 somehow if you use a Tainted Worldstone Shard. There's a lot of cool things you can do. More DR, you know, there's definitely a lot of options. And like I said, there's definitely some, if you don't care about the mobility as much, there's definitely more damage and more even negative res to be had potentially on this build. And Ming Song's Lesson, even more crazy approach to this build, absolutely. Can get even more damage with the lower resist and whatnot, and more negative enemy res. However, in that case, you don't get the negative enemy physical resistance or the life, so, or even the fire is. So it becomes more problematic in some other ways, tanky-wise. So there's definitely other options for a bowling staff druid, hardcore or softcore. But at any rate, what we're going to do here now is I'm going to show off this build in a couple of key areas. So we're going to show him off in 3 LOD areas I think he performs incredibly well in. And then we're going to focus on showing off some maps real quick, and we'll show you how he performs. So, obviously this is a very strong version of this build, but a much weaker version of this build. I do LOD content with no problem. There's no fire immunity in here. And as you can see, Bowling Druid is a beast. Stony Tomb is always in the rocky waste somewhere random. You can farm these areas. Now, without a lot of base MF, you're probably going to want to stick to maps, but if you had more MF and weaker gear or whatever, you know, there's a lot of things you could do. You can even wear Skulders to increase your magic fund. Do just fine in here. But as you can see, this is pretty effortless. Stony Tomb is going to be a very nice area for farming on this build. No problem, right? Keith's Fortune, very nice. 15 vendor reduction, but otherwise pretty trashy. I know some people might keep that, but I have a lot of those already. And so let's continue. Let's go do the Maggot Lair. The Maggot Lair is also an amazing area. It's practically one big bowling alley for an LOD area. And honestly, you can turn on some music even if you want. Alright, here we go. So, As you can see, having more freedom of movement is a very good thing, especially when you have Enigma. It's just very nice in general. Allows you to traverse maps more safely and quickly as well, which is something I'll be showing here in a second. I really love this build. This build is amazing. I've always wanted to make this build on an actual season. I've tested it many times in beta. Can't go wrong with the Fire Druid. Oh man, looks like we're having some issues finding the maggot lair. This does happen. You never find that hole, man. Never can find it. This is a theme in my life. A theme of sorts. Alright, here we go. See, it's just 1 pixel, you know? It's that 1 pixel you can never get to, you know? Feels bad, man. Alright, anyway. This build just has incredible power. And as you can see, my summons keep me pretty safe. Like, most of the time, just 1 point into the summons and a lot of plus skills, the summons are pretty good. The damage reduction aura also helps out the summons. It also helps them survive a little bit better, despite only having 1 point into it. Something else to keep in mind. But anyway, you can see, it's just one big bowling alley this area. It's pretty awesome. You can just go around, kill everything. He's gonna bowl a perfect 300, man. Really crazy stuff. Now, I'm just going to show that off real quick there. And then one other area that's going to be really important in LOD for any Fire Druid, of course, even with weaker gear, much more budget gear, which I'm sure people are going to ask about. Does this build function with budget gear? Yes, it's just going to be a bit slower. You're not going to have as much mobility. But all those 2 areas we just showed there are perfectly fine for budget gear. Absolutely fine. And so what we're gonna want to do now is we're gonna want to go get the Word Slig. Apparently I don't have the Stony Field waypoint, which is kind of annoying. But you know, it is what it is. Alright. So Stony Field. Alternating between teleports as I teleport around. Let's go do the cow level. Now, cow level, fire is always going to be good for you. You could even do a fissure approach for cows, which would, you know, obviously don't focus on any negative enemy physical res at all. No amp, nothing. You just go for negative fire res. You'll look here on fissure, you'll see it. There's no physical damage on fire, whereas there's physical damage on these 3 abilities, which is what this build focuses on. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go in here. Now, for cows, honestly, cows you can just go Volcano. Cows can be a little dangerous to teleport into as well, so that's something to keep in mind on the Staff Druid, because even with all your summons around you, cows are so dense, they hit very hard. As you can see, I just took a lot of damage there. So I'm not just joking. You can definitely die teleporting around cows, especially while amped. So you might want to be careful about that. Okay. As you can see, though, Volcano is very strong. As a matter of fact, when we are not doing the LOD secret cow level here, it will show here that sure to keep your buffs up. A lot of hotkeys for a reason. Of course, cows are very good for runes, charms, bases, gems, jewels, and things of that nature. But as you can see though, I could also use Volcano, and in between the cooldowns, see, Volcano has a very small cooldown. You can also use the Molten Boulders. Notice how I just used Gust there, and then I couldn't use Volcano? That's why sometimes using Enigma Teleport is nice, because then you can do this. I mentioned this earlier. It's one of those quality of life things, you know? Armageddon does a shit ton of damage. Now, in cows, you're not going to be using it, making too much use of it, but it is something you're going to want to use elsewhere. But you can see, though, that this build with Volcano can utterly destroy cows, no problem. So now what we're going to do is we're going to show off some of his best maps. There's definitely a lot more he's capable of doing. I mean, Royal Crypts is going to be really good, too. Horizons will be decent. There's definitely a lot of maps that are going to be good. Let's show him off in some of his better ones. My loot filter, which you can access through the launcher now, and exclamation filter through my channel, now actually shows you which, shows on the map itself what the danger, like weak mappers, strong mappers, and whatnot are for a different map, except for Blood Moon where, you know, there's nothing specific. Everything's good in there. So like on this map, for instance, you'll see that now. All of the fire is a strong element in all the maps are going to be doing. Of course, Blood Moon is good no matter what. What we're going to do here first, though, is we're going to actually do a Blood Moon just to show you guys that it's the same thing in a Blood Moon map. This is a tier 3 map with cows. It's the same shit. Literally the exact same shit. However, you do have to be very careful in here of accidentally teleporting into the cows. So as you can see here, this build absolutely shreds the cow packs. I wouldn't do too much teleporting in here. Once again, you teleport into the cow pack, that can be your last. The monsters are dense, your summons don't always save you. The monsters will hit you anyway, in the case of the cows, definitely the case, so you'll want to watch that. As you can see though, in Blood Moon map, there are endless cows. And it's really good fun, so. Volcano, as you can see though, very strong in Blood Moon particularly, so. Make sure to revive your summons every once in a while. Having that cast rated at 163 makes it really easy. So just firing off the boulders very quickly. Especially while amped, don't teleport into the cows. A negative physical res on you is gonna kill you. But yeah, I think you guys get the idea though. As you can see, it does unreal amounts of damage. You don't even have to use Molten Boulder in here though, you could just use Volcano. Just go around, just use Volcano with impunity. And everything dies insanely fast. But, you know, even just Molten Boulder isn't too bad, though. And of course, Fissure also just works well in Blood Moon as well. As you can see, that Blood Moon made very good. Very good map in general, right? Right. Very cool. we're actually just going to get out of here. I know I'm wasting a map, but I just wanted to show you guys how that works. Now we're going to do some medium % life maps that he's also good in here. So you can see what else he is capable of. He's definitely good at a lot of maps, but there's plenty of bowling alleys to be had. These are the bowling alley maps, that's what I call them on this build. Basically any kind of like narrow passage map can be very good for this character, and these are 3 of them that I think exemplify this very well. So for instance on this map here, Forahan Jungle, no fire immunes, which makes it pretty ideal. Okay. So on this one, you might be thinking on hardcore, how could you play so aggressively? Well, to be fair, that's how you play this build properly. The only way to play this build properly, truly, is to teleport directly into the mobs, and as you can see, this bowling alley of a map is very good. And as long as you teleport with your summons like that, you'll be good. Your summons don't die too frequently. Oh, look at that experience shrine. I might go till the experience shrine runs out. We're almost level 90 on this character. Pretty good though. Now we got lots of people dying. Rip. Get some Fs, baby. Get some Fs in there. But yeah, as you can see, even with fanaticism though, best case scenario is no fear. However, sometimes when there's dual aura, you might want to sit back a bit. Don't move from your position, but just like cast Volcano. That can be a good approach for sure. You'll see that I do have some mana problems here and there, which definitely can be good to address. Yeah, this is definitely one of those maps that's just one big multi-lane bowling alley. We recommend kind of like throwing your balls everywhere. And balls are very powerful. Notice most of the time I don't get hit. Make sure to keep your Armageddon up. Make sure to keep your Cyclone armor up. Most of the time you're going to be taking elemental damages. It's more likely to pierce through your summons, but you won't take it. Your Cyclone armor is up. And just spam boulders. There you have it. It's a pretty baller build, right? Yeah, see here, let's say you're not comfortable jumping into the monsters. You can always just do that, right? Uh-oh. So for instance, there, that looks a little dangerous, right? Definitely want to watch it, because remember, you don't have a shield. And those quill rats will kill your ass hard. So yeah. So yeah, you can definitely play a little bit safer. Definitely, definitely. Oh, we just found a Thunderstroke. I didn't even see that. Wait, did I pick it up? No. Wait, what? Oh, that must have been from the Armageddon. Yeah, that shit, if they got double aura, those quill rats can hit so hard, it's insane. You might think you're fine with 2500 health and 25 DR, but It only takes maybe a couple of hits and you're down. So it's really important you don't get hit. See, Armageddon does 12,000 damage. I could just kind of sit here and show you guys what Armageddon does. Like, look at this. As you can see here, obviously throwing the Molten Boulders is better, but it does a lot of damage. It's doing so much damage, it's killing monsters by itself. So all that damage around you also helps keep you safe, along with the summons, because every time you jump into something, it's instantly decimated. Isn't that kind of cool? I think that's kind of cool. So that's why being aggressive with this build is very good. You get the most out of your DPS, and you keep yourself safe by killing the monsters immediately around you. +4 T-strokes and a +4 IK armor. This would be awesome to brick later. Make sure to keep all your buffs up. That includes your bow. Bow helps your summons too. Yeah, you see this? Most people would be pretty scared to just jump into stuff on hardcore without a shield like this, but strangely enough, it actually works on this build. It's a good approach in general. However, you do have to watch the dual auras because they can kill your summons really fast, and if they kill your summons, they will kill you. Just keep that in mind. If all your summons are amped and the monsters get multiple auras, that can be a death sentence. Multiple damage auras, might, concentration, fanaticism. You know it. You know what it is. You know, I don't even have to describe it really. You can see most of the time I don't lose too much health, right? Most of the time. I mean, it's you know, it's a little spotty obviously, but as you see there, I actually got hit pretty hard. Every once in a while, that might happen. Summons aren't a perfect shield, which is why it's important. You're ready to hit that juke button. As you can see though, he maps very, very fast. Once again, you can always range things with Volcano. Definitely have options. Just put them at the edge of your screen and bam. Very, very good. Goodness. Okay. Alright. As you can see there, I just took a hit there. It does happen. Especially the melee attackers. The ranged attackers, unless there's like Pierce on the map, don't normally hit you like that. Some of these other ones can though. Now one thing to note about Molten Boulder is that certain monsters will actually go through, and it's based on the... So in Diablo 2 there's different monster sizes. And certain monsters it will go through, and then other monsters it will stop the boulder that are big monsters, and it's all about the size classification of the monster. And that actually goes for some bosses too. There's actually bosses where the boulder will go through them and it will destroy them incredibly quickly. Hopefully we'll be able to show that against one of the bosses actually. But you can see though, those monsters, it gets stopped on, the really big ones, the crushers, and then everything else is just going right through them. Devastating the whole pack of monsters in front of you. As you can see though, it's pretty crazy stuff. Like this monster here, I think this is gonna be the boss up here, right? This one, not quite the same. Yeah, it did. Oh shoot. Uh-oh. I'm not hitting them right. Okay, there we go. And you can alternate between Volcano and Molten Boulder here. But notice that it doesn't really go through it. That monster's too big, so Molten Boulders are still the best way usually to kill a boss, even if the boulders don't go through. But if the boulders do go through, like on certain bosses, the damage is pretty insane. Now, let's go show off 2 more maps here. A couple more bowling alleys that definitely need to be shown off a little bit here. Alright, alright, so there's this one and this one. Let's go show off West March. West March I don't think has any maximum life, unlike the last one we did. It actually had a little bit of maximum life, so that's how much damage you're doing. They're still pretty much dying in one shot, even with a lot of maximum life. He does a ton of damage. Alright, yeah, I'll show Shadows of West March. Now, this one has some fire immunes, but they can be broken by infinity or lower resist. This one has fire absorb, but it shouldn't matter too much because we just do so much damage. Absorb mostly, you know, has an impact when the damage is being heavily mitigated by something or other. Now, this one can be a little bit dangerous because of the witches, but in general, it's gonna be pretty solid. So on this one, as you can see, same thing as all the other ones basically. When Enigma runs out of charges, you can always alternate to Gust, which is kind of one of the things I like to do, so it makes you just plow through these maps incredibly fast. Oh, that one had Conviction Aura, that's kind of nice. Oh yeah, and then you find a skill shrine, you can take advantage of that. You can actually boost your life a bit there. Very, very cool. Alright, so as you can see, we're doing a crap ton of damage. Not a lot of witches in this one, actually. I think this one's a little bit low on the witches. Notice how I walked a bit forward there and took damage. Avoid moving away from your summons. Once again, that's really where most situations get deadly, honestly. And not only do we have life per kill, but we also have life regen on all the summons and myself, because of the Oak Sage. Now sometimes these boys are a little tanky and they also stop your boulders, so the boulders don't move through them, which means they do less damage to them. Might be better sometimes to toss a Volcano on them or two. For the most part, we're going bowling. Of course, you can just toss a boulder on them afterwards. Oh, wow. Diablo, interesting. As you can see though, the boulders do a lot of damage. And in general, it doesn't matter too much. Oh, he dropped an Ondals, interesting. Oh, it's a +3 Ondals, ugh. Make sure to keep your buffs up. Yeah, take out those auras, always take out those auras, you never know. Notice though in general, see those are ranged concentration monsters, and in general those would be very dangerous if you start ranging them from a distance. That's why it's just better to tele-stomp them. Let's get right on top of them. I'll get rid of the amp, why not? Means more animals die, so keeping the amp on them as infrequently as possible is nice. As you can see, this map is just one big bowling alley. It's a big bowling alley for sure. As you can see though, Volcano does a ton of damage even in these situations. But you might notice that if I run a bunch of Volcanoes everywhere, they don't kill the monsters as fast as just bowling them down in most cases. The 163 FCR boulders. Notice when I don't run into the big monsters, the boulders just go right through everything. It's pretty devastating. Or the overlords, those are the fire immunes actually right there. Bear got hit there. Keep your summons up. And keep bowling. There you have it. Awesome, right? Shadows of West March, very good bowling alley. Another very good bowling alley. Of course, you know, like I said, you could also do Bastion Keep. You do Horizons, you can do Royal Crypts. Those are some easier tier 1s that are pretty easy targets. This character has a lot of solid tier 2s though, as you can see though. Definitely a lot of them. I'd say tier 3s are definitely in the tougher realm for a build like this, but except for Blood Moon. That's okay. There's some that are decent, so you can always hit those up. And then we can also show Tomb of Zoltan Kuul here, and show this off. So Tomb of Zoltan Kuul can be dangerous, but once again, it's all about keeping yourself in the middle of the pack and centered. Once again, you don't care about negative block maps. There's a bit of maximum life on it, but that's about it. You just don't care about negative block at all. Negative block doesn't matter because, as you probably have already gathered, you don't have any block, so why does it matter, right? Just get right in there, start pounding away. Now, if you're a little bit afraid about all those auras that they can hit you with, like I said earlier, just fucking range them with Volcano and you'll be a lot better off. If you're a bit concerned about all those auras, I mean, they can hit very hard, right? But that, you can also just jump right on top. So, you can do that too. It's a little bit more ballsy, but just remember, you know, especially if you're amped and if you take too much damage from those, that can hurt. This is an amazing bowling alley, though. I think this is arguably his best map. Oh, dang place. Meatballs, bowling balls, you get it. And ding ding ding, level 90. Ain't that awesome, see? Now you can also put points into vines, which is something I didn't mention. That's 100% viable though. 100% viable to put points into vines. Absolutely. Make sure you keep your summons up. But notice that your summons can tank almost everything. And that's the key. Notice the second I moved away from my summons though, that's when the danger starts occurring. Alrighty, baby. I don't know if the boss is up here. We can check that out actually. Actually, I don't know. Is that the boss? I don't think so. No, it's not the boss. Okay. Well, anyway. When it comes to this boss literally just gets bowled over. Like the molten boulders go right over him and he dies in like 3 seconds, which is pretty amazing. Anyway, I love this build. It's a ton of fun. It's really fast. Some people wonder about clear speeds. I mean, most of these maps can go down somewhere between 10 and 12 minutes. No problem. Some of the bigger maps, of course, are going to take longer, especially something like Blood Moon, because you're not really making full use of your Armageddon, and you can die if you just jump into the cows. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We're going to put some timestamps below so you guys can check out different portions of this guide. Remember to keep your buffs up. And this is a solid A+ build. You can even argue it's even borderline S- because of how fast it can clear with 163. FCR Meatball, Boulders, Bowling, whatever you want to call it. This Fire Druid is a beast. Always check out the rest of my guides on Maxwell and on YouTube. Just remember that. Damn, another death. Terrible. And I am always live streaming on twitch.tv/darkhumility. Anyways, see you guys next time. Make sure to give us some love if you enjoy these videos, and you can always see more excellent builds. This is definitely a real danger build, but as you can see, he's ready for anything. And of course, we will see you guys next time, maybe with another two-handed hardcore special. Alright, Dark Humility, over and out.